Hello for today's lesson. Today we're going to make some cables, some straight through cables and some crossover cables. We're going to use the tools that you got at the beginning of the class. We'll run through how those work, what they are. We'll talk about cable types, the tools we need to use them, the materials we need, and you'll make some at home. You should have in your kit that you've signed out for your a spool of wire enough to make, I don't remember the details, or like 4 4-foots and a couple 2-footers and some RJ45 ends, the cable ends that we're going to crimp on. We're making our own cables essentially. How exciting is that? Have you gone to the store and bought an Ethernet cable, 3-foot, 6-foot, 10, 15 bucks each? We can get a spool of wire for $50, 1,000 foot, and make lots of cables, custom link, cut off what you don't need, and put terminate a new end on there. So let's go ahead and get started with that. I want to change my camera down here and look at the tools that we have here. This is the toolbox you have. The only difference is I don't have the cable tester. I've got one like it, and I'll show you how that works, but yours is real simple, real similar. Okay, so let's open up our case and run through the tools really quick. If you're familiar with them, just kind of follow along anyways. Starting on this side, we've got our cable crimpers, and they do a couple things. There's a couple sizes. If you notice, I have an 8P, a 6P, and a 4P. That's for pin. An 8-pin is what we deal with cabling, computers, Ethernet. 6-pin is for voice. So is a 4-pin. We don't use that much anymore. Those would be an RJ11 connector. This is an RJ45 connector with 8 pins. But anyway, this is the tool that crimps the end on. It also has strippers and cutters. I personally don't like them. Others do. You can see this here has 2 blades that don't quite touch. That's for stripping older telephone lines, 6 conductor telephone line that was flat. So you'd put the flat part in there, pull down, strip it off. It also has a cutter on this end. And it's just not useful. We got better tools for that. But anyway, some people use it. Notice also it ratchets when you put a cable and an end in there. You click it and let go, and you have to get to a certain point. You have to go all the way before it opens up. Okay, keep that in mind. If it's locked and you can't, it's like, I can't twist it anymore. There's a little release screw here with an arrow. Twist it, and it'll open up. Okay, I'll put those down for now. This is a punch down tool. This is for use with terminal strips like this right here. This happens to be a 12-port Cat6 terminal strip, and we terminate wires on this end here, bare wires, and then we'll take our wire that we built, go into our computer, plug it in to one of these. Okay, and then that goes to the wall or to our computer or whatever. It didn't go in because I haven't crimped it yet, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. So how this tool works is we take a wire. I don't have one set up. We'll go more into it in a little bit, but pop the red piece off there. Be careful, there's a sharp edge right here that can cut you. It's spring-loaded too, so when I put pressure on this, I'll put a wire along here. Let me just do it really quick. Going ahead of myself. I'm going to show you what I did, what all this stuff means, what we're doing here real quick. I just want to show you what this tool does. So we put a wire from the inside. I'll find my associated color. So I've got a green and white. That'll go right here if I'm going into conductor or slot 3. And I'll take my tool with the sharp edge pointing away from the wire. If I have it with the wire in like this, I'm going to end up cutting my wire off. So I'm going to put it on the outside to trim it. So I simply put it over this hole, push down, it cuts the wire and terminates it in there. Okay, so I have a good connection here. We'll do more with this later. If I don't like it, I do it wrong, I simply lift it up and it comes right out. You can see the wire's kind of crimped in there. Okay, we'll come back to that. Anyway, that's our punch down tool. It's spring loaded. You can adjust the tension with this wheel here. There's also another die in here. We push in and twist it, and then it comes out, and you can use that end as well. Okay, I'll leave it how it was with the slicer we have. Put the little cap on so we don't hurt ourselves. Put that away. Next, we have diagonal cutters. These are called dikes. They're used for cutting cable. They're pretty strong. You get your best leverage at the tip, not at the mouth here. So if you're cutting, don't cut in here, cut at the tip, and you'll get better leverage. If you take and hold it up to the light, you might see light coming through here. It's designed that way. There's a better teeth grip up here, just for cutting wires, okay? This next piece is a stripper, wire strippers. They also have cutters on this end, same type, where you can put a wire in there, a flat wire, and strip it, or cut right here. I find these, difficult to cut with too, so I just used my diagonal cutters for everything. On here, we've got 2 gaps where the wires go in, and notice there's a little razor blade right here that digs into the wire. We don't want to cut the wire too deep. If we do, we are going to nick the wire and it's going to break off and fail early. We can adjust that blade by taking a screwdriver and tightening this jam nut. If we do that, if I tighten it in a counterclockwise direction, the screw is going to push on that and the gap's going to open. As it opens, it touches the wire less and less until eventually it doesn't touch at all. If it's not touching enough, loosen this screw right here and the jaws will close down tighter. And I'll show you an example of how it should be set once we strip our first wire in just a minute here. It's real important we get this right. It could change over time, or you use different wires that have a little bit of different thickness. You might have to adjust it a little bit, but get this set right before you start really putting a lot of work in, or you're going to be redoing a lot of cables. And maybe that's not a bad thing, but just kind of keep that in mind. We'll get to that in a minute. Our next tool is our screwdriver, one of the most important tools we need for working on a computer. I'd say 90% of the stuff we can do is done with a number 2 Phillips. A number 2 is the size of a head that we screw into. There's a number 1 and a number 3, but number 1 are super, super tiny and number 3 are really large. So a number 2 screwdriver will just about be everything we need. If we're dealing with laptops, we've got Torx and other things like that. But for just standard computers, we've got this. This screwdriver is also reversible. So if you pull it apart, you have a flathead in the other end. You could do that and work with a flathead if you needed to. Okay, keep that in mind. Next, we have a knife, a razor knife. Some people like knives to cut wires, strip wires. It's good for lots of different things. It just comes in the toolbox. The neat thing about this is you'll see on the blades themselves, there's little serrations. If your blade gets dull, slide it out to where the serration is just past this little piece here and snap that off with a pair of pliers and you get a brand new blade. So it's reusable. It's kind of neat. Okay. The last piece you have, and mine's a little bit different, is your wire testers. 2 different pieces. You'll plug one end of the RJ45 into one end of this, one end of the other, turn it on. Yours requires a 9-volt battery, so run down to Harbor Freight or something and get a couple of those. The way it works is yours will light up. So they slide together. If you take the black end, you'll notice there's a groove. You can kind of slide them in and they lock in place. Then when you turn it on, you'll see the lights go like that and like that. Number 3, number 4. And if there's a mistake, it might do that, or it might go, like that with one color and no color to let you know that either ends are good or they're not good. Okay. And I'll show you an example of that on mine, at least. Yours is a little bit different, like I said. Okay, that's all of our tools. So what we're going to start off with is this one, the strippers. We're going to use the crimpers, and we're going to use our diagonal cutters. Okay, so I'm going to set the rest of this toolbox away, and let's talk about cable for a minute. Okay, so we've got a box of Cat 5e, Cat 5 Enhanced. We're at 6e, 7's coming out. This is what we have for right now. It comes in a big box. There's a couple things I want to talk about. The first is proper cable etiquette. There's a little hole here. When you're going to get cable out of a box, cut it, and then when you're done, put the little thing back in here, so the loop doesn't get sucked back in, because it's really a pain in the butt to open this box up and you know, fish out the wire and stuff like that. And it's just nice. Okay, so we're going to grab some wire, but first I want to talk about the box. This is a 1,000-foot roll. So if I needed to, you know, it's one continuous piece. I cut off what I need. If I need 6 feet, pull out 6 feet. Plus, because you want to be able to have enough to work on both ends, you're going to cut some off, or you might, you know, make a mistake or something like that. So give yourself a little bit, you know, like 6 inches on each end to start off with. This is 4 pair. I'm reading upside down and backwards. 24 AWG. AWG is American wire gauge. That's the size of the wire. Something else. Okay, that's not important. PVC. Okay, so let's go ahead and get some wire. Just a little piece right here. What I'd like to do is I'm going to hold on this end and cut here. If I'm holding it on this end and cut it, it can get sucked back in the box. And sometimes it'll do that when the box gets low because the wire is wound so tight. So I'm going to just cut off right at the end again here. Okay, and I'm going to stick that back in the box. Again, this box is like $50 or $60. So if I was going to get Cat 7, it's probably a couple $100. You can go to Best Buy and get a roll of like 25 feet of this and with non-terminated and strip it and do everything yourself. Okay, so what we should notice about the wire itself is it's plastic coated, and that's because plastic is a conductor or insulator. It's an insulator. Let's look at the markings on here. If I can find some markings. There are no markings on this one. Here we go. I cut it off. Cat 5 UTP solid. Okay. Let's see if I can get that in the picture. You'll see it when you look at yours. Cat 5 meaning it's a category 5 enhanced. UTP is unshielded twisted pair. Okay. And it also says solid. We could have stranded wires in here. And let me see if I can Google a picture of that for you really quick. Stranded versus solid wires. That's going to be a pain to switch screens. We'll do that at the end. Okay. So keep in mind we have shielded twisted pair, unshielded twisted pair. That's the UTP and STP. The difference between UTP and STP is the shield. Now, if I strip some of this wire off, and I'm going to talk more about it in a second, but just to show you, if I had shielded, it's going to need to be adjusted. If I had shielded wire, I would have like a piece of, it almost looks like aluminum foil wrapped around here, and I just peel that off. That's to insulate the twists here. If I've got high voltage or radio frequency or something going on, it can interfere with the signal and cause my interference with my computer speaking to other computers. So the shielding adds safety, adds protection to it, we'll say. It also costs more. So if you're in an area where you don't need shielding, you can save a lot of money by buying a UTP, unshielded twisted pair. Twisted pair because there's 4 pairs of 2 wires, a pair of 4 twisted pairs. Notice they're different colors and they're twisted inside the twists themselves. So that's for a reason. Also notice we got this dental floss looking thing here. That's because this wire is 24 gauge. It's super, super tiny. I can pull it and it'll snap. If I take and wiggle it around enough like this, it'll snap. It's just super light stuff. So this gives us strength on long pulls because we'll actually stick the wire through a conduit or in the ground or whatever and pull it really fine. We'll pull hundreds of yards of this, and this will keep it from ripping or tearing the wires. We don't like that when we're working with cabling, so it's proper etiquette to nip it off. Now, mine's so short it's just going to come right out, but we don't want to see that when we're making cables. It's just very I don't know, not classy, I guess we'll call it. Okay, so I've got twisted pairs. I've got sets of colors now. If we look at it, and we'll see closer in a minute, I've got blue and a blue with white, orange, an orange with white, a brown with white, and a green with white. Now, some manufacturers' colors are not as good as others, and I've opened up pairs where this color and this color were so close I couldn't tell the difference. When I say white with a color, if I unravel it, the blue, for example, here I can see I have a solid blue, but now look at it's like a white wire with a blue twist all the way around it. You can see it real carefully if you look careful. That's important because we need to identify the wires on both ends. If we get them wrong, it's not going to work. Pin 1 on this end has to go to pin 1 on this end and all the way up to pin 6. That's a straight through cable. That's going to be the first kind we're going to make. There's also rollover cables and crossover cables. A rollover cable is where pin 1 here is 8, 2 is 7, on and on, all the way till it rolls over. A crossover cable is a common cable. We use those when we don't have smart devices where like a computer to a computer. They're smart, but the NICs, you know. So a crossover cable will allow us to connect two devices that aren't on a switch, we'll say for now. We'll learn more about that later, okay? So the order is important, the color is important. So to make a cable, let's go ahead, and I busted that loose. So let me go ahead and chop them off even. Now be careful when you've got loose wires like this and you cut them, because they can shoot. They go all over the place. I just lost them in my keyboard. So be careful. Don't aim it at your face because it'll shoot up and get you in the face. So we've got these wires. The first thing I need to do is untwist them down to this sheathing. The sheathing is just plastic, not super strong, but it does insulate the wires. We have insulation around each wire too to keep them from touching. If they touch bare wires, we have a short and it's not going to work. Okay, so unwind them all the way down to that. Now we also have different types of UTP and STP. We have plenum grade, which is even more expensive, and that is fire, not proof, but fire resistant, fire retardant. It's good for running through attics and stuff like that. Okay, so we unwind them all the way down to that sheathing, okay? Now we've just got a bad hair day. So what I like to do is hold it with my left hand because I'm right hand dominant, and I bend it and twist it and straighten it and just go back and forth a couple times. And you'll notice they start to straighten out a little bit. They're thin wires, but there's 8 of them. Do this enough and your fingers will get a little tender, okay? Now I've got a pretty decent, you know, they're fairly straight. What I want to do now is put them in order. What order is it? Well, if this end and this end are the same, it's going to work just fine, but we want to use a standard. And the standards we use in Ethernet and computers are the 568 and the 568A and the 568B standard, okay? So that's what this is. It's color-coded, and we do need to memorize this. You put a 568A on one end, a 568A on the other end, and then it's a good cable to work. You put a B on one end and a B on the other end, and same thing, it's a straight-through cable. Now, the cool thing about this standard is if you put a 568A on one end and then a 568B on the other end, it makes a crossover cable. So you don't have to remember 1 and 3 and 2 and 6 are crossed. It just happens for us, okay? So another thing we do have to memorize. So let's take a look at our chart here. I'll put it right here. I don't know how well you can see that. But we're going to do the 568B standard, okay? And it tells me that my first wire, let's just walk through this real close up close, is my orange and white, then my orange, then my green and white. You see that? Then blue, blue and white, green, brown and white, brown. Okay. From left to right is the pins, pin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And how do you know what's up or down? If we take a look at our connector with that little tab, the tab is on the bottom, pin 1 is on the left. Okay, tab on the bottom, pin 1's on the left. If you accidentally do this, it's not going to work. You have a rollover cable. Okay, so and I'll remind you a couple times, and you do it a couple times, you'll remember after you have to make an extra cable because you put it on wrong. So let's start with the order here, and it tells me that the first one is, and I'm going to go left to right. Pin 1 is on my left. You're right here. So white and orange. So let me go find that little guys right here. And I'm going to pull it off to the side as much as I can. And the orange is next, so that worked out well. Now I got a little twist right here. That's kind of going to be annoying. I'm going to set it up the best I can, but it's not ideal. That's going to happen. You'll have wires that have to come all the way across all over, all of them. It's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. The plug allows for that. It gives us enough room to deal with that. Okay. The next wire is my green and white, which is here. Again, it's not very optimal, but I can kind of make it work. Then my blue, solid blue. I'm kind of pinching them here so they don't get scattered and get twisted. And then my white and blue is next. This is very messy, and that's good. Messy is good. We learned from that. Green over here, white and brown. Maybe over this way might be better than the brown. Now I'm pinching it between my index and my thumb right here. Let me bring this up just a little bit. Okay. I'm going to keep this pincher, and I'm going to use my other hand and go back and forth this way and that way. And they're slowly going to start coming together in order. I got a little bit of a gap there, so I'm going to keep working it this way. Back and forth to eventually slide up and down a little bit, twist back and forth, maybe go that way, then that way. They're going to be in order and they're going to stay. So I could actually let go of it. I'm going to confirm they're right. White, I can't see that. White and orange, good, orange. White and green, blue. Oh, this one got messed up. This one got out of order. The white and blue's got to come back. Okay, there. Then the green, then the white, brown, and brown. Okay, so once I've got them in order and they're pretty, they're going to move a little bit. What I want to do next is trim them so they fit inside of this this RJ45 connector. Now, keeping the pin away from me, I want to remember that the tab goes away. I'm not going to keep saying that. What we need to do is get the wires to where they come to the very end, right up to here. If they're too short, there's a connector right here, a little tooth with a metal connector on it that when we crimp, slides down and digs into the wire and makes the contact. If the wire's over here, it's not going to be long enough to reach the contact and it's not going to work. Okay, so we have to make sure it's long enough to touch the very end, but we don't want the plastic to be outside of the connector like that. You might have seen cords where they're, that's not good. We want the connector to be all the way up to here. Let me get my pen. All the way up to here, right there. And that's because when we crimp, there's a little triangular piece right here that will snap down into the wire right here and hold it in place. So when we're pulling on the wire, it doesn't snap out. Okay, so we got to get our distance right, and practice is going to help you with that. So I've got about that much there. Let me do like this. I'll hold it with my thumb so they don't get out of place. And I'm going to clip right about there. That's a little bit too long. I'm going to come down just a little bit. Just from experience, I know that. I'm going to continue to hold this now while I cut these wires off. Okay, there's my straight cut. They need to be straight. If I cut at an angle this way or an angle this way, they won't be flat in here and they won't reach the end. Okay, so for me, keeping the tab away from me, I'm going to, with my thumb still on that wire right there, I'm going to start it. And when it gets in a little bit, there's little grooves in here that hold that wire in place. Okay, so I'm going to push it to the end. Now, if we could see right there, my wires make it to the end, and the sheathing goes just past that diamond. So we got a little bit of gap between here and here where those wires can be twisted and it'll be okay. All right, so before I crimp it now, I want to do one last visual on it just to make sure. If not, this is my last chance to fix it. I've got white and orange, orange. I can't tell. It looks like green and white, blue. I can't see so good. We're going to assume it's right, okay? You guys have better eyes than I do. So get our crimpers out, find the 8P, and you'll notice that, do this without letting go of that end, that there's a drop. Let's see if I can get it right here. Right here, that's where the tab goes. Across the top is where the crimpers come down and push these wires, okay? So I'm going to insert it in here. Okay, still putting a little bit of positive pressure on it. And I'm going to crimp it all the way down. Both hands, I usually push it on something and use all my weight to get it down on there like that, okay? It might get stuck. You might have to actually reach in there and flip the tab to get it out. But once you pull it out, You see that the wires go all the way up there. Everything looks good. Let's see if I can get a good shot on that. It's not going to come into focus, I don't think. Anyway, that's one end. We're halfway done. We need to do the other end now. Okay, so let's talk about stripping this wire. I mentioned we're going to come back to that. So you saw that last time, or you might have not noticed it, when I spun this around, it didn't do anything. I'm barely touching that wire. I've got a little bit of a score, which is good. So this one needs to be adjusted. I am going to get my screwdriver. And in this case, I want to make the mouth tighter. So I'm going to reduce the distance. I'm going to back out the screw, I'll say, and I'm going to do it a quarter of a turn. So with my thumb here, I'm going to go right there. Okay. Go quarters of a turn at a time until you get it right. Now, when I put my stripper in the biggest gap here, right here, all the way to the end, I'm going to give it one spin and pull it out and see what I got. Still got nothing. So let's do another quarter turn. Okay. Strip it again. I felt it grab that time. You can go around a few times. You'll see a lot of people do that. They do that with a RG59 cable, like coaxial cable, because it's got to cut through the sheathing. We don't do that so much. If you do that, you get a better chance of nicking the wire. So right now, it cut into most of it, but it didn't do the bottom, and I like that. That means it didn't cut too deep where I'm going to, nick a wire and it's going to break off. So what I do here is I bend it towards the opening, and that usually snaps the end off. Okay. I already pulled the dental floss out. It's not dental floss. I just call it that. Now I want to look real close at the edge right here, all the way around, and do this for a while until you're sure that this is set right. Do you see any nicks in these wires? Because if you do, as we're bending them back and forth and putting the end on, that wire's going to break off and you got to start over anyways. So you might as well do it now. And these look good. Okay, so that's set right. I always check it every 3 or 4 tries, because going back after the fact, after you build all these cables and nothing works, then you're like, oh, where do I start? And you start testing cables, get your cable tester, and find one of your ends is wrong. Oh, well, that's because, you nicked the wire. So we're going to run through the same process. We're going to unscrew this, untwist it. Now, the twisting is important. Someone a lot smarter than me determined that if they could adjust the twists in the wire, the distance the data can travel can vary. And so they've managed to get the maximum length out of the data by twisting the wires just enough turns and twisting the twists altogether. Once you do this, you'll get a feel for the fingertips and these wires. They're frail, they're soft, but doing it many times and 8 of them at a time, they can wear on your fingers. Okay, so I got I forgot the green one. Got my bad hair day now. Okay, so I'm just gonna work it a little bit back and forth. Okay, starting with, again, I'm doing the B standard, so I'm going to do my orange and white. Turn it a little bit so it kind of works better for me. Orange, my green and white, blue. These don't line up too nice. Now you will have to know this, like I mentioned, it's going to be, you'll be tested on this, not just your, this week, but for your competency at the end of the phase. You want to make sure you can build these in field. Now, once you're in field, I recommend, because if you don't do it all the time, you forget. So I keep something like this in my toolkit at all times in case I ever need to refresh, or someone says, hey, I need a B standard or something else different. Okay, so I've separated them. I'm going to twist them, working it back and forth. Check the colors before I cut them off because it's easier to reset them that way. Green and white, blue. That looks good. Okay, so I'm going to get my dikes. I'm going to pinch them and hold for distance. That looks about right to me. So I'm going to go ahead and trim them off with still keeping. I always keep one finger, the back side or the front side. I just messed it up. I let go. Yep. White and blue. Come here. Where are you at? White, blue. Good. How did you two cross? Anyways, I was saying I like to keep a finger on them at all times so that doesn't happen. Green, blue and white, good, good. Okay, so now that I'm in order, I'm going to keep my fingers on them at all time. Too long. Cut right about there. Have my end handy. With the orange and white, my B standard on my left, I'm going to put the tab away from me. Slide it in here. Once they go in so far, what the heck's going on? Is this one crimped? They're not going in. What the heck? I think I had a bad connector. Hopefully it doesn't get too far out of whack. Green and white. Nope, the blue and the green shifted. Let's see if I can fix them without having to redo it. Probably have to redo it because the blue is going to be too short now. Yep, gotta redo it. Okay, real quick, I'm going to cut it flush. I'm going to speed through this one really quick for sake of display. Okay. Give it a bad hair day. I think straightening the wires out is the most time-consuming thing. And you might, I mean, don't think, oh, I'll never have to do this. It's like, who uses algebra after high school? You know, you'll do this. A lot of places will, you know, they don't like paying all that extra money for wires, so they'll sit down and have a cable making day, make hundreds of these at a time. Okay, so orange and white, orange. Come on. All right, let me twist that around because that's not very good. Orange and white, orange. Green and white, where are you? Blue. Sometimes they'll end up laying out real nicely down here. Other times they're going to be so crossed, and that's what happened last one. I let go and it kind of spun out of place. I should never let go. Blue, then my blue and my white. Here, green, white and brown, brown. Okay. Bend it, bend it, bend it. Heat makes these wires more pliable too, so the more you bend them, the more pliable they get. Okay, one quick look. That looks right. Another thing to mention, these are solid wires. Sometimes we'll have stranded wires. I was going to get a picture of that after this. And those are just a bunch of wires twisted. It's the same thickness as this wire. Imagine one solid wire like this, and imagine a bunch of wires the same diameter twisted together. Those are good for cables that bend a lot. If you've got something that's not going to get moved a lot, this is a better conductor, the solid wire. So use that when you can. But if you got wires that move a lot, imagine a big old pipe like this with a nail going into it. Okay, that's kind of what we're doing here. And if it moves around a lot, that nail is going to wallow the hole out a little bit, and it's going to be loose to eventually where it can come out. And that's, you know, what happens with these wires. So if you're going to move, if it's going to be a wire that moves a lot, it's a good idea to use stranded. But typically everything's a solid wire. So there's my length, my cut. It's going to be right here. Let me get a new one just in case. You guys, if you run out of ends, let me know and I'll get more to you. Okay, pop it in. Go to my 8-pin, put it on the desk. Oh, my weight. Crank my back. And I should have a good cable. Both ends go up past that diamond. They go to the very end. The crimp went down all the way. So how do we test it now? Get out your handy dandy tester. Mine's going to be a little bit different. Yours is going to go light on this side, light on this side, down, 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 down to show that it's right. Mine's going to do kind of the same thing, but it's going to be on the same piece. So I put both ends in, I turn it on, and we can see here mine goes 1, what's it saying? 1 and 2 is good, pair 3 and 4 is good, pair 4 and 5 is good, pair 7 and 8 is good. So I've got a good cable. Okay. Let's punch down the punch down block, and then that'll be the end of this. in there. Strip it. Straighten it out. We pull out the floss. Okay, now you each have a terminal strip, a punch down block. They might be different. It's okay, as long as you follow the color code on the device itself. And I'll show you what that means in a second. So I untwist these again. Okay. Now, for this particular one I have, it's a 12 port. So I'm going to have 12 wires coming into this thing. So I need to be kind of tidy when I'm punching down this one. So the next 11 wires that go into it have a room. I don't want it to look like a rat's nest. We want it to look professional. Okay. These don't have to be super straight like they do when we're making cable ends. So I'm going to twist this one. And I untwist the orange and white. Okay, so we also, these punch down blocks also use the 568A and 568B standard. And that's another reason we want to know those, okay? So in my case, if I look at my code, I'll try and get as close as I can, but let me figure it out myself first. So this right here is pin 1 or slot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 12. So that tells me the slot 1 over here has 4 wires, so 1, 2, 3, 4 on the top, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the bottom, because I know it's an 8-pin connector, right? Now, if I have 2 rows, if you look real close, my B standard is closest here, and that's my A standard. And right here, and I'm going to turn around to see, that looks like a green, then a green and a white, a blue and a white. If I want the A standard, it's orange, whatever that is, blue and white. Okay, so follow your standard. I'm going to use the B, so I'm going to use this color code on these 4, and this color code right here on the bottom 4. If I wanted to do pin 4, I would come over to the 4th, and I would find, you know, the 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe count from the end to make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, right there. So these 2. Okay. I'll do that one. I'll do number 4. So I'm going to lay my, let's see if I can take this down a bit more. I can't really prop this. Where am I prop this here? It's not going to work. Here, I'll do it against me. My 4th one, it's blue and white is the first wire. So I'm going to put my wire right about here. Here's where I'm going. Okay, and here's where my sheeting stops. So my white and blue, and I'm simply going to lay it across there and push down a little bit, and then blue, then green and white and green. A little bit easier than making cables, and green. Then on this side, I've got orange, white and orange and orange. Then white and blue, or white and brown and brown. And I'll come in closer so you can see. I just don't want to let go and have everything spring all over the place. Okay. So that's just barely, I should have had that in the middle, but that's okay. Okay. So my wire would have been nicer to be right there. Okay. That gives me lots of room. So my white and blue, blue, white and green, green, white and yellow, or white and orange, orange, white and brown. Once that looks right, I'm confirmed it's okay. I'm going to go get my punch down tool, take the end off. Now it's real important that the blade, the long part, always goes on the outside. If I do it on the inside, I'm going to cut my wire off before the contact. Okay. Now what's going on here is there's some little teeth like this. And when I lay my wire in there and punch it down, it gets crammed into the teeth, and the teeth cut into the wire, making the contact. Really cool idea. Okay. So I just take my punch down tool, go to the wire right here. That's my first wire. I punch down, it cut off the wire and made the contact. It knocked my second one out. They all came out, but that's okay. I can reset them real easy. Spin it around, or spin the device around, doesn't matter, just as long as the cutter's on the outside. There. So there's our punched down wire. Okay. We're going to do this more, and as a matter of fact, in one of our labs, we're going to make some cables and connect our computers together. And we'll use a punch down block. So we'll punch down from like 4 to 7 from here to here. And then we'll go take one computer, plug it into 4 and one into 7. And we'll make one of them a crossover. So, you know, we can speak computer to computer without a switch and go from there. Okay. Again, any questions you have, feel free to email me or text me. And if not, we'll talk the next day in class. Okay. I think I covered everything, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Okay. Good night, guys.